school calendar.
This is the first read for the school board. We'll have a second read at the January COW. We may need a third read in February if legislation changes. So we usually use the months of January and February to approve the district calendar. Also with some of the uncertainty surrounding COVID, we need to be prepared for that. Attached, you'll find, it says draft number 4, just says Mary Ann and I continue to mess with dates and get feedback from feeder schools, and we shared a copy with our collective bargaining unit. This is the proposal for a traditional school calendar for next school year. There are a couple things. Obviously, this is a draft. I just want to make note, October 11th, we have a couple different options. Right now, the state still has deemed as one of the state holidays is Columbus Day. I know some schools have changed that to Indigenous Day. Some schools use non-attendance day. So as our first draft and discussion, that's something that we need to discuss on how you would like to proceed with that. Again, I anticipate there may be some legislation that will change that. That's being proposed in Springfield, but I don't know when that will take effect. And so it's up to the board if you'd like to leave that as Columbus Day or change the name of that. We can discuss that. I did, as I stated earlier, I did meet with the feeder schools and showed the calendar as well. The only thing that would impact this calendar, if for some reason a statute is passed that extends the school year or expects future years to be extended, that's something we need to keep on our radar. One other thing that would not be reflected in this calendar but would cause me to bring an amended calendar to the school board for us to get started in August. Right now we're slated to start on the 12th or the 13th with 2 institute days like we were scheduled to do this year, and the first day of school would be on August 16th. In the event we are still going through a vaccination process for students so that we can do traditional school day with 100% attendance, if I needed to extend the start date, if we needed to move it back to closer to September and move the end of the school year closer to after Memorial Day and closer to June, that would be something we would I want to make sure it's on the record we're discussing that. It's not something we're prepared for at this time, but if the vaccination process does take longer than expected and we are going to, and the state requires students to be vaccinated to start the school year, I would prefer that we extend the calendar so that we can start and do a full school year with 100% attendance in traditional school year to allow enough time for the vaccination process to occur. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not saying that will occur, but I just want to make sure that we are aware of that. So other than that, this has the 175 student attendance days, the 1 day for parent-teacher conferences, the 4 institute days, and the emergency days as the current state statute requires.
Amending is pretty straightforward, right? It's like
You
would bring the change, we would discuss it for a couple of minutes, the why, and then it would just be
Correct.
okay, right? It's not a huge process if we need to
Correct.
do something.
The main
like
thing that we
right?
try to get this out sooner rather than later to ourselves and the feeder schools is so parents have an idea of when winter break is and when spring break is. The feeder schools all start at slightly different times. They start slightly later, usually a week later than us. The main thing is to try to allow plenty of time for families that have students both in a feeder school and the high school so that they can kind of time up the major start dates, end dates, and the spring break and winter break.
Well, and I think, yes, and some teachers use it as a basic planning structure, right, for
Yeah, I
units
don't know
and
if teachers are
quarters
planning a year ahead at this point in time,
well,
but I would say, yes, I understand that.
Any thoughts?
or if nothing else, planning their flights out of town, right? For someday, for better days.
So,
No questions were, actually, you did submit the
So the
question
black-
about the length
yeah,
of the day.
so I just read about the Black Caucus bringing up the possibility of more pupil days. How does that affect our world? How does that affect?
Right now,
us
the
as a
public
district?
school calendars there's some set parameters in statute that we follow in the school code. And so our updates from the superintendent organization and the high school district organization said that The bill that passed the House and Senate recently, they removed the extending of pupil attendance days, and they're gonna take that to the P20 Council, which is a council that was established in Springfield that included elementary, high school, junior college, secondary schools. They kind of help serve as an advisory council to the State Board of Education and to the legislature. And so this would be, so it's tabled for right now for a future recommendation from the P20 Council.
So if I could jump in, actually, the bill that passed, to track with what you just said, requires, whether it's that group or State Board of Education, now to issue a report by the end of 2021.
Correct.
Which, in my opinion, really defers any action for quite some time. If we know that students have lost opportunities and classroom time and education time to kind of wait for the state to give us guidance, I'm not sure that's the best place to start.
So when Mr. Smithing submitted that question, I sent his question to our legal counsel, and to extend our school year, she felt at that point, right now, we would still need to follow what's in the current statute, which is not to exceed 185, which includes 5 emergency days. So we're currently within the parameters of the statute. She also felt that anything that would be extended over that would need to be negotiated with our union, because you would have to compensate for the, possibly compensate for the extending the work year. So I did look into that with legal counsel, and she was gonna get back, give me another response. She wanted to look into it a little further, but she thought that there had to be some additional language amended in the school code in order for us to use a different term.
That is to exceed the 185 or to exceed the 176?
You can exceed the 176 if you want to eliminate institute days. So the parameters say it has to be a minimum of 176 student attendance days, unless you use 1 for parent-teacher and 4 institutes. If you do not do 4 institutes, then you have to, every less institute needs to be added on for student attendance. But the
Okay.
total would be the 180.
Okay.
So the 5 emergency days are in the statute, because I looked that up.
Correct.
Even though we don't need emergency days in this district because we have a virtual option.
Correct. But again, the statute's written from the top to the bottom of the state.
Right.
I don't ever, and I would never say never, but I would say with the remote learning plan and the e-learning plan that we already have approved, we have identified that we could do, it's safer instead of doing an emergency day. But at this point, the flexibility is not there where you can say, hey, let's eliminate those 5 emergency days and put those in as pupil attendance days. That's what I was trying to get clarification from legal counsel. And at this point, she didn't think we could do that. And we definitely would need to bargain that.
Right.
Was her opinion, but she wanted some more time to look at that.
Right.
And that's part of the reason why that was pulled so quickly from the stuff down in Springfield, because can't afford another, districts can't afford another unfunded mandate from the state, especially one of the magnitude of 5 extra student attendance days without bargaining those with every school district in the state.
Yes, I think our support groups, like the superintendent group and some of the information I shared with the board in the Friday update, was the concern with that is, you know, by extending the school year, if you have to bargain that, and that's going to have additional budget implications, there's already some uncertainty on what's going to happen with the evidence-based funding, state funding, and some of the other financial impacts of property tax collection from COVID and the pandemic, the COVID pandemic. So that was one of the concerns, and I think that's why that portion was pulled from the bill.
Plus,
Yeah, I think it's just tough. I mean, the incoming freshmen have less education than
well,
the 4 grades in high school today. And
You know,
I think that's it's a quandary, right?
yeah,
best for
also,
kids.
the juries, I mean, I know everyone has a very strong opinion about learning loss, but my opinion is that the jury is still out on that subject. For instance, in my district today, we are testing kids on NWEA MAP remotely, because we have not started our hybrid program yet. So what are those numbers gonna look like? We don't know yet. What are the implications of that? We don't know yet. So, and I recently read an article of a woman who's probably about my age, who, went through the war in like Yugoslavia, Serbia, right? And says that she missed like 4 or 5 years of school. But she is a successful business person who and I know every kid doesn't have the gumption to maybe go on and do that, but it was just a article about how maybe it's not as bad as we think it is.
I think there will be a definite impact at the K through 8 level. At the high school level, I think it's still to be determined.
The impact might be very uneven.
That's true too, right?
What did you say?
So the impact we may find is very uneven.
Uneven,
from
yeah.
kid groups.
Within districts, within areas of the country, within, right?
But
Within
more
areas of
time,
the district.
more time isn't gonna hurt, right? Like more time in learning would never hurt.
Sure, I agree.
I'm just saying.
The extra 5 days, that'd be terrible for the next 4 years. I don't know. Anyway,
What I'll do is I'll continue to work with Nikki from Frantic, and when we discuss this again at the COW, see if I can get any additional updates on, like, what is their flexibility as long as we're within that 185.
well, and I think this is, as we're talking about the calendar, this is when we have to talk about these things. It doesn't, that's why we talk about this as the business of the district, right? When we have to talk about it. Well, thank you for looking into that, Dr. Skin, because I appreciate it, because it's for the kids. Okay.
Oh, this is a first read, so
Yeah,
we're
we don't
gonna
Yeah,
have
let
it's
no
this
first
more.
read,
ride.
this is now, we're not
Yeah, we're not ready for that
finalize
yet.
this, we don't finalize this calendar till February.
Usually a February business meeting,
Right.
so we got some time.
So we got some time, and that's why we have first reads, and that's the whole idea. Okay,